Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to be defending my thesis entitled Optimality Theoretic Analysis of Najdi Broken Plural. Here's my outline. First, I'm going to introduce the thesis questions, which I'm trying to answer by undertaking this project. Then I'll introduce briefly the topic of Najdi Arabic and broken plural. After that, we will delve together into the literature review, some of the literature review. And then I'll introduce the rule of how to derive broken plural. I call it the phonology of broken plural in Najdi Arabic. After that, I'll introduce some terms before we start having some data samples here to take a look at it. And then I'll analyze my data using optimality theory framework. After that, I'll just discuss my results and conclude summing up main points. Okay, here are my thesis questions. First, how is broken plural derived in Najdi Arabic? Second, what are the morphophonological processes that participate in broken plural formation? Okay, so what is Najdi Arabic? Najdi Arabic is a dialect of Arabic spoken in Saudi Arabia. It is derived from an Arabic word, najd, which means a highland, and broken plural is a type of plural in Arabic, along with other two types of plural, sound masculine plural and sound feminine plural. These two actually are irrelevant to my study, but I'm just introducing them briefly. Those two types are called regular plurals because they just take the suffix "in" with sound masculine plural attached to the singular stem, and the suffix "at" attached to the singular stem in sound feminine plural. But our focus is just broken plural, which is far more complicated than that. The basic definition that you would find in literature is that broken plural is a type of plural which is derived by an internal modification of the singular stem. That's the simplest definition that you may find. And modification here refers to a change in vowel qualities. So that's fundamental to broken plural. Why is it called broken? Because it breaks the common rule of suffixation we find in these two types. Here you have to add a suffix only, but this one, you may add a suffix, but it's not this one. It involves also a change in the singular stem. Okay, the first study was done, the influential study was carried out by McCarthy and Prince, two famous phonologists, back in 1990. They come up with a theory that derives broken plural from root consonants mapped on a template, they call it a template, of an iambic foot light heavy. And actually their data contains some counter examples which does not follow this light heavy template. Let me show you just two examples here from their paper. Here we have root consonants, because in Arabic it's different from English. In English you have roots, but they are meaningful, like the verb write, for example, it's meaningful. But roots in Arabic are just consonants, and the vast majority of them are just three consonants. So these are meaningless on their own. They don't mean anything. They have to be attached to like verbs to give you a meaning, to vowels to give you a meaning. So their claim is we derive broken plural immediately out of root consonant. They skip the singular word. So they map it on a template or a foot like this one, light heavy. And it's called iambic because of the number of moras in the second one is more. We have two moras here, but we have one mora in the first syllable. So that's their claim. Another study is done by a guy who's a researcher from Oman. His name is Al-Akbari. It was carried out in 2012. He studies broken plural in his dialect called Muscat Arabic. And he analyzes data within optimality theory framework. And he come up in his conclusion with a light heavy foot, the same as in McCarthy and Prince. But this light heavy foot actually exists with an affixed mora, an extra mora added to the broken plural that we do not find in the singular stem. And remember, here he derives broken plural out of the singular, unlike what McCarthy and Prince did of deriving it out of root consonants. So this affixed mora, actually the extra mora that shows up in the broken plural of Muscat Arabic, is relevant to my study of Najdi broken plural because we both have the same structure. I call it common broken plural in Najdi. It takes an extra mora attached to the broken plural stem. Okay, another study was carried out by Rashid and Shakir in 2014. They are both female Iraqi researchers in Al-Basra University. They address broken plural in a different dialect. It's called Modern Standard Arabic. and they analyze their data within the framework of optimality theory. Also, they base their work on another very important study, which I followed in my analysis of McCarthy 2000. And by the way, this McCarthy is the same researcher who was studying with Prince in 1990. He just went back and reconsidered after a decade his study of broken plural. So what does McCarthy think of broken plural? He views it in his research of 2000 as a difference between the difference between the singular and the broken plural lies in one extra mora added to the locus of the broken plural. Both researchers insist on the iambicity of broken plural, which means it makes up an iambic foot light heavy as a common shape. And here is an example from their paper. This example says the word masbah in Arabic, which means a swimming pool. Notice the first foot is heavy because we have two mora. Take a look at how the first foot changes in the broken plural by addition of a mora. They split this heavy on one syllable, the two moras on two syllables. So we have one here and one here. And the affixed mora, or the extra mora that she says here, lengthens the vowel in the second syllable, making up a light heavy foot, going along with the claim of McCarthy and Prince and Al-Akbari. So here's the most important study I found so far. It was carried out by McCarthy 2000. I'm just stressing it again. He addresses broken plural in the same dialect of classical Arabic, but now within OT framework, because back in 1990 there was no optimality theory. It started in 1993. So he analyzes his data within the framework of optimality theory. He builds his work on a very important theory of correspondence that came into being first by McCarthy and Prince in 1995. Their theory simply states that if you have two strings, S1 and S2, correspondence is a relation R from an element of S1 to those of S2. That's what it means. And he views broken plural as, that's how he describes it, McCarthy. He says a segment-to-segment correspondence and a mora-to-mora correspondence. Every segment, and actually he uses the word segment to refer to consonants, although segments include vowels. But he says, when he talked about the identity, he talked about consonants only. So he says every segment in the singular has to have an identical, pay attention to the term, an identical segment in the broken plural. But every mora in the singular has to have a correspondent. Doesn't have to mean to be identical. Has to have a correspondent mora in the broken plural. I'll explain this notion of correspondence when we come to the data in a better way. Now we turn to the phonology of broken plural in my dialect of Najdi Arabic, how to derive it, how to derive a broken plural in Najdi Arabic. I say here the broken plural stem is derived from the singular stem by root consonantal identity and output moraic correspondence. So we have two processes here. Root consonantal identity involves that root consonants have to be identical, have to be exactly the same, both in the singular and in the broken plural. So if we have root consonants like kataba in the singular, someone's knocking. So if we have root consonants kataba in the singular, we have to have kataba in the broken plural. But with regard to moras, it's defined like this. For every mora in the singular stem, there is a correspondent mora in the broken plural stem. This actually involves, it means moraic identity, but it also allows the broken plural to have an extra mora. Because it's okay, because once we start corresponding moras, for everyone in the singular, there has to be a correspondent one in the broken plural. And then we are good. So if we have extra moras, 1 or 2 or 10 in the broken plural, we're fine, we don't care. Because we're just concerned about the moras coming out of the singular stem only. And the final thing, which is very important here, vowel qualities change in the broken plural stem in an unpredictable way. Based on this rule, I found like 2 types of broken plural in Najdi Arabic. The first I call common broken plural, which is derived by copying moras of the singular stem and then adding an extra mora. We will talk about the function of this extra mora in a minute. and the less common broken plural, which is derived just by copying moras of the singular stem. This less common actually has moraic identity. If you have two moras in the singular, you're going to have two moras in the broken plural. But this common broken plural, you're going to have an extra mora. And we'll see what does this extra mora do. Okay, I just said the common broken plural has an extra mora. We have three tasks or functions of the extra mora, or they sometimes call it affixed mora, in the broken plural stem. So what does it do? The first function is it lengthens the vowel in the rightmost syllable. So if you have a light singular stem, it will end up like this, light heavy. I write it in blue because of the affixed mora. It lengthens the vowel in the rightmost syllable, which is its natural position. Immediately, if you have an affixed mora, it's expected to go to lengthen the vowel in the rightmost syllable. The second function, if it doesn't lengthen a vowel, it geminates the medial root consonants. So it doubles. Geminates means double the second root consonant. So if you have a singular stem like this, have a long vowel in the first syllable, and just a simple onset with one consonant, we expect the affixed mora in the common broken plural to double that consonant. So it will end up like this, and it's going to be identical. So this consonant in the onset will double and will occupy the coda position of the previous syllable. That's where the affixed mora lies. The third actually is if you try to add an affixed mora when you have a final syllable heavy, which means it's already full of moras. Syllables in Arabic takes just either one mora or two moras. One, it will become light and it accepts an extra mora. Heavy, it's already full, so you cannot add any other mora. So what will you do? It will initiate this affixed mora will initiate a new syllable, and it will become like this: light, heavy, light. We will see some examples on that in the data sample. One issue here related to vowel lengthening happens. I said in the rightmost syllable. This is if you don't have any affix. This is if you have just a broken plural stem. But if you have a prefix like ma attached to the singular stem, attached to the broken plural stem, it will attract the affixed mora to lengthen the vowel in the syllable adjacent to the prefix. And if you have a suffix like in, this suffix will attract the affixed mora to lengthen the vowel in the syllable adjacent to the suffix. And we're going to see some examples of that. So all these processes concern the common broken plural, which I said takes an affixed mora. So what about the less common broken plural that takes like equal moras in both the singular and the broken plural? We simply notice absence of all of the above. So here we don't have any vowel lengthening, we don't have any consonant gemination, and we lack actually affixes. Okay, so before I present some data samples, I need to define some crucial terms here, because I want everybody to follow me. So I said moras. So what is a mora? For those who are not have basic knowledge in phonology, a mora is an abstract unit of length that exists in syllables, rhymes. In English, a syllable consists of an onset and a rhyme. Moras exist in the rhyme, in the nuclei and codas. So if you have a long vowel, this long vowel will carry two moras like this. If you have a short vowel, it will carry one mora only. And codas are filled generally with consonant. If it's filled with any consonant, one or two, it takes just one mora. So that's a very crucial term. Another term is, I said, stem. So the singular stem derives the broken plural stem. So what is a stem? A stem in Arabic refers to a free morpheme to which affixes are attached. But this stem has to be meaningful on its own. So it has to convey meaning. It has to allow attaching or annexation of a prefix and an infix and a suffix. They literally consist of root consonants in Arabic plus vowels. So this is an example of a stem in Arabic. So the word talib, it's a stem. Why? Because it's meaningful on its own. It has a meaning. It means a male student. And it accepts the annexation of a suffix at to become talibat, which means female students. So that's an example of a stem. So what is an affix? An affix in morphology is a bound morpheme that cannot stand alone with meaning, but gets its meaning when it is attached to a stem. So in English, we have the prefix dis, for example. On its own, it means nothing. But if it is attached to a stem like respectful, so disrespectful means not respectful. Or re is a prefix that means nothing on its own. But if you attach it to a verb like write, means rewrite, it means again now. That's what it means, because it gets the meaning when it is attached to a stem. Okay, two more terms before we start looking at the data. This is a very crucial term. It's a constraint in optimality theory. It's called weak edge. What does it mean? It means that it's an optimality theory constraint that requires the right periphery in a prosodic word to be empty. Empty means moralist. How could this happen? Spalti in 2002, who first produces this, he says that final consonants in all prosodic words have to be moralist. Means they don't occupy a coda position of the last syllable. Rather, they belong to the larger prosodic word. So, in a nutshell, in my data, if you take a look at the final consonant, do not count it as carrying any morals. Finally, optimality theory, finally in terms of crucial terms, it's a theory that of well-formedness that is very influential in phonology. Actually, it revolutionized phonology. Back in 1993, Prince and Smolensky, two famous phonologists, put forth this theory of well-formedness. And the main idea, briefly, about this theory is that grammar of any language imposes a set of restrictions on what is an optimal output from a given input. And they have two types through constraints, of course. We have two types of constraints in optimality theory: markedness constraints and faithfulness constraints. Markedness constraints rate how okay something is, and it is related only to the output. But this one, it's like onset, and we'll see some example of them. Start, three moras, no coda. Faithfulness constraints actually monitor the identity between the input and the output. And it's like max, depth, and ident. Three principles of optimality theory. One is universality, two, violability, three, ranking. Universality just states that constraints of optimality theory work for every language, but with different ranking. Violability actually means that's the crucial difference between a constraint and a rule. Constraints are preferably respected, but they can be minimally violated. They allow minimal violation, unlike rules in phonology. Ranking, constraints are not like ranked equal, they're not the same, so are ranked in terms of dominance. Some of them are more important than others in judging the optimality of any candidate. So the undominated constraints must always be respected if you want an optimal output. Now we start delving into the data. I collected data from two Najdi speakers. The first is me, the author, Faris, male, 26 years old. The second is Mayada, female, 23 years old. Both once lived in the western region of Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, and completed BA degree as their level of education. So the total number of broken plurals I collected was 345 words, and they are distributed in terms broadly into four groups in terms of the mora count. I call bimoraic, broken plural that contains two moras, like light, light and heavy, and it is derived by mapping moras from the singular stem only. Trimoraic, we have two here. One is derived from the singular stem only, and the other is requires an extra mora. Both trimoraic consist of three moras. Tetramoraic and pentamoraic, like four moras and five moras, and they all require an extra mora in the broken plural. Now we turn to the first set of broken plural data. Here we have a bimoraic stem shape heavy of broken plural, and that's what I mean by bimoraic. It consists the same number of moras. It contains the same number of moras in both the singular and the broken plural. Here we have two, and here we have two. So we're good for the rest of the words. And the other thing is I call root consonantal identity. If you take a look at the root consonant, you will find them the same, in the same order in both the singular and the broken plural. So if you take a look at this one, it's the same root consonants in the same order and the rest of them. So what does this tell me, the moraic identity and the root consonantal identity? It talks about the less common broken plural in Najdi Arabic, and it follows the proposal or the rule of output moraic correspondence, because every mora here corresponds to the other. So this mora corresponds to another mora here, this mora corresponds to the other mora here. So we're good. This is just another example of a less common broken plural, which takes equal moras in both singular and broken plural, and identical root consonants in both, but here it's just the only difference is that this is 3 moras and the previous one is just 2 moras. Here's an interesting one. Why? Because we have, this is an example of a common broken plural in Najdi, because we have just 2 moras in the singular and we have 3 here. We will count it together. The first root consonant actually carries a mora. Why? Because it occupies the coda position of this prefix. So a coda has a mora, and the second mora is in the vowel in here. So here we have 2 moras. Once we start mapping them, we'll see 1 and then 2, but we have an extra mora here lengthening the vowel. Why? Because this is a common broken plural. And why it is only lengthening the vowel in this syllable? Because there is a presence of a suffix ma, a prefix ma that requires or attracts the extra mora to lengthen the vowel if in this leftmost syllable. If we don't have a prefix, we expect it to lengthen the vowel in the rightmost syllable, just like this set. If you take a look at this set, we have an extra mora here because we have 2 moras in the singular but 3 in the broken plural. What does the extra mora do? It lengthens the vowel in the rightmost syllable, which is its normal position if we don't have any affix attached to the broken plural. Here is an interesting set of broken plural that works not by vowel lengthening but by consonant gemination. Here, the extra mora geminate or double the second root consonant. If you take a look at the second root consonant here, you will find them doubled in the broken plural. That's what the extra mora do. You have 3 moras in the singular but 4 moras in the broken plural. And the extra mora here geminated or doubled the second root consonant. And this works actually follows the output moraic correspondence and root consonantal identity. Final set, before we take a look at the chart of data, actually concerns the last or the third function of an extra mora, which is initiation of a new syllable. If you take a look at here, we have 3 moras, disregarding the suffix, of course, because suffixes are outside the stem. I said just a stem is root consonants plus vocalism. So we have 1, 2, 3. If you start mapping them, 1, 2, 3. But suddenly we have an extra mora initiating a new syllable, and it occupies the vowel position, the nucleus. So we have to just mention that these glides that fills the onsets are not part of root consonants, because Arabic does not allow any empty onset. You cannot start a syllable with a vowel. You have to have an onset. And in Najdi, we fill the onset with glides ya and wa, but in modern standard Arabic, we fill it with a glottal stop. So that's the third function of an extra mora. It initiated a new syllable to the rightmost of the broken plural. The reason, because this rightmost syllable, the second one, is already full of moras. You cannot add any more moras because it's full. It has 2. There is a chart here of the percentage of each type of broken plural in Najdi. I found like the common broken plural derived by mapping moras from the singular and then adding an extra mora, as I said, to lengthen a vowel, geminate a consonant, or initiate a new syllable. It constitutes 85% of my data. So way ahead of this one less common broken plural, which just map moras from the singular stem and involve moraic identity between the singular and the broken plural. Here we have just 3 shapes: heavy, light, light, and light, light, light. But here we have 5 shapes: light, heavy, 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 light, heavy, light, and heavy, heavy. Analysis. Now we turn to analysis. I used the optimality theory to analyze my data. Actually, the constraints, both markedness and faithfulness. These constraints help me analyze data on broken plural. The first one is max, which simply, it's a faithfulness constraint that simply bans deletion. And it states here for this formulation, for every mora in the singular output, there is a correspondent mora in the broken plural output. So no deletion of mora. This constraint actually, when respected, allows you to have equal moras in the singular and broken plural, and it also allows you to have an extra mora or moras in the broken plural. This one, dep, which literally means don't epithesize, don't add anything. So here it states for every mora in the broken plural output, there is a correspondent mora in the singular output. And this one actually is violable. It's very low ranked in Najdi Arabic. You can violate it by epithesizing the extra mora for the common broken plural, but this one is not. Once it's violated, you don't have a well-formed broken plural. These two are faithfulness constraints. This one is a markedness constraint that prevents any syllable to have three moras. Onset is normal, requires every syllable to start to have an onset filled with a consonant. And this is yet another faithfulness constraint. Both are undominated, these two. So they must be respected if you want an optimal output. The final constraint actually says for every root consonant in the singular output, there is an identical, notice the difference, not corresponding. There is an identical consonant in the broken plural output. This constraint is undominated. It must be respected if you want an optimal broken plural, but I will not consider any candidates violating this as this goes through all my data correctly. Here's my first tableau of a less common broken plural that requires equal moras in both the singular and the broken plural. The word is alim, which means a scholar. How does it turn to broken plural? By copying moras from the singular into the broken plural. Because it's less common, we have three, we should have three moras here, and also keeping the root consonants. If you take a look at the first candidate A, which means ulama, it wins the competition over an optimal broken plural because it doesn't violate any of these constraints. Why it doesn't violate? Take a look at them one by one. Max bans deletion, and we have three moras, and we have three moras here, so we're good. If we have two moras here, then this one is violated. Just like B, we have two moras, and this one is violated. Onset is respected because we don't have a syllable starting with a vowel. Star three moras is respected as well because we don't have any syllable with three moras. All have just one mora. And deb is also respected because we don't have any addition of moras. So three moras, which this one bans addition of moras, but it's ranked very low, so it doesn't mind if you violate it. As I said, B loses because it has fewer moras. C loses because it has a syllable starting with a vowel, violating onset. And D loses because it has a violation of star three moras. Okay. This is an example of a common broken plural which takes an extra mora lengthening the vowel in the rightmost syllable. And notice we have one grammar for both. The same constraints, the same ranking, because there's an important issue here. These dotted lines, if they're clear, I don't know, between those two means those are unranked, so they are equal. So the first candidate, also a winner. There's one issue here also before we start. The word is asad, means lion. It takes a mora in the broken plural. This plus mora actually concerned the candidates. It has nothing to do with the singular. It tells you, but you just need to add an extra mora in the broken plural. So the first candidate wins the competition as an optimal candidate for broken plural. Why? Because it doesn't violate any of these three undominated constraints. Those three only that require you to respect them. This one is a violable constraint, so it's okay to violate it by adding an extra mora. So this one is respected because we don't have fewer moras. Onset is respected, as I said, because no vowels. Star theory moras is respected. This one is violated only because we added a mora. So we have two moras in the singular, but three in the broken plural, which is fine because this is ranked very low. So you can have an optimal candidate that does not violate them. And remember, an optimal candidate does not mean zero violation. It means a minimal violation. B loses because it has just fewer moras, violating max. C loses because it has three morate syllable, and D loses because we have a syllable starting with the vowel, violating onset. How about broken plural with consonant gemination then? The same set of constraints and the same ranking. So we start with a three morate singular that turns to a tetramorate broken plural by geminating the consonant. A actually loses because it has a syllable starting with three moras, and this is not allowed in Arabic or Najdi specifically, so it loses here. And by the way, this gray means no, and the exclamation mark. There is no point in discussing any other constraints once this constraint is violated, just like max here. B actually is the winner of an optimal broken plural. Why? Because it respects the undominated constraints here. We don't have any less moras, we don't have a syllable starting with a vowel, we don't have a trimoric syllable, yet we have a minimal violation of adding a mora to violate that, but this is fine as the final constraint is ranked very low. C loses, as I said, because it has fewer moras, violating max, and D loses because it has a syllable starting with a vowel. This is the final tableau in our analysis. It concerns a broken plural with a suffix. It's also treated the same, just exactly the same, with the same constraints and ranking. So the first candidate, we have a trimoraic singular, ghazal, it means gazelle. In the broken plural, it takes an extra mora. So this A actually loses because it violates seriously the undominated constraint max, which bans deletion. We have 3 moras in the singular. We expect to have at least 3 in the broken plural, but we have just 2 here. So this violates max, and no more discussion of any other constraints once this constraint is violated. So B actually loses because we have a syllable with 3 moras. Hope it's clear, the dot here after the Z. So we have trimoraic syllable violating star 3 moras. C is the winner, the optimal candidate, because it doesn't violate any of the undominated constraint. It adds a mora because we have 4 but 3 in the singular, but this is fine. As I said earlier, dep is a ranked low constraint. Final candidate loses because it has a syllable starting with the vowel violating onset. Now discussion, and then I'll conclude in a minute. The key finding in my thesis shows that Najdi broken plural follows classical Arabic broken plural, the analysis that was done by McCarthy in 2000 in its requirement for root consonantal identity and output moraic correspondence. The notion of like mapping moras from the singular to the broken plural, not vice versa. It also delivers an alternative account to what McCarthy and Prince in 1990 argument of broken plural, deriving it out of root consonants, then mapping these root consonants on a light-heavy template in classical Arabic. Because it doesn't work for Najdi, as we have different shapes here. Heavy, heavy, light, 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 and heavy, light. Those all do not work, do not follow light, heavy, which makes his claim at least does not work for Najdi. Although he did not say that, it works for other dialects, but that's just a generalization, a notice. However, the proposal that was first put forth by McCarthy in 2000 that I just described of moraic correspondence and consonantal identity actually worked for classical Arabic as he previously did it. I'm just stressing his work here. And then it works for Najdi Arabic, and I assume it works for any other dialect of Arabic. So to conclude, Najdi Arabic is a dialect of Arabic spoken in Saudi Arabia. As I said, broken plural is an irregular way of pluralizing nouns in Arabic. The major contribution in my thesis follows what McCarthy 2000 analysis did on broken plural as output, moraic correspondence, and root consonantal identity. And the constraints that are relevant here to my analysis of broken plural is max as an undominated faithfulness constraint, which must be respected, and ident, output consonant, which also must be respected. We have also 2 markedness constraints. I did not put them here because I'm concluding. Onset and star 3 moras, which must be respected. And the extra mora has 3, that shows up in the common broken plural, has 3 functions: lengthening a vowel, geminating a consonant, or initiation of a new syllable, if the rightmost one is filled. Thank you very much for listening. That's it. Questions? Feel free to ask me any question about it.
I guess an observation. So you were saying that in the original analysis, just to clarify, of McCarthy and Prince, that they were taking the triconsonantal root as the base, basically, for the template.
Yeah.
But is it your claim that you're deriving this from the singular stem?
Well,
not from the
many people did it before me. Like the first one who did it using optimality theory was McCarthy 2000, who's the same researcher actually who worked with Prince in 1990. He's the first one to come up with it here as to derive the broken plural out of the singular by
using correspondence theory.
Correspondence theory.
I see. So that's that part you're taking that tack, but then you're analyzing this system.
Yeah, I said clearly in the discussion that I'm following McCarthy. I did not make this up. Although Chris that I reached this on my own before I read McCarthy 2000. That's
So
why I maybe said my analysis.
I guess it happened. You probably worked it out. What would happen if you tried to do it off of the triconsonantal roots?
It doesn't
fails
work
completely.
Yeah. It gives you it makes it like messy. What would you say, trochaic or iambic? It gives you many stem shapes because take a look at the shapes that I had. They're both trochaic. I have this one, which could be trochaic, and I have this one, which iambic. And I have others like this one, Moraic trochee, you can say, and this one. And I have many, so how would you say it? How would you describe the Najdi broken plural? Is it trochaic or iambic?
Right.
And so I wanted to get something very clear, which is Moraic correspondence and root consonantal identity.
That might be a nice demonstration. If you don't, I don't know if you did that in your thesis, like, hey, if you did it this way, you couldn't get that, because you'd have to stipulate all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, yeah, so I actually have, I'm trying hard to think of some killer problem and I don't see one, so that's nice.
That's good to
But
hear.
I think, yeah, I'm trying. I think there might be a couple of things you can simplify, but that's just good,
Yeah.
right? So that's not a problem. But I want to just get to Brian's thing. So I think there might actually be a way to keep the very, very old observation, which precedes, right, that goes back to Arabic scholars, right?
Yeah.
The very old observation that the root is the three consonants. I think actually your analysis, which as far as I can tell totally works, it doesn't require that the root not be three consonants. You could still have the root be three consonants. Because what you're saying is the number of moras in the broken plural is always predictable from the number of moras in the output of the singular.
Correct.
Except that it might be one extra, and that's when it's an affix. That mora's
And
an
it
affix,
does a
right?
function, yeah. We didn't
Right,
leave it.
so you don't actually need that. The fact that you get the number of moras from the singular, and that's output correspondence, means that you don't care how many moras were in the underlying form. Which means the underlying form could just be three consonants, like everybody said from 600 AD to
Right.
20.
There's nothing to draw off.
In that way, you don't have to
Yeah.
lose that nice idea that what's different about Semitic languages is that the consonants carry the root meaning and the affixes carry the grammatical meaning. That's a beautiful old idea. And your solution actually allows us to keep it in a funny way, right? Because you separated out what is input-output correspondence. That's the consonantal identity.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the output-output correspondence is the moras.
Correct.
But that means, other than that, you know, what the input is could just be three consonants, and that
And
wouldn't
that's it,
actually be, then sort of everybody's happy.
Even Al-Akbari commented on this idea in his paper. He said we cannot do the input-output correspondence, the one that was done in McCarthy and Prince 1995, in base and reduplicant, because the input in Arabic is meaningless. It's just
Right.
roots. So
Right.
how can you make it out of roots? And
Right.
it makes it like a messy theory. It doesn't hold once you do the analysis.
All right.
That's why Al-Akbari and others, McCarthy, they did it output correspondence. Even Rashid and Shafer, they used the same thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I should say, just a clarification thing. And I didn't actually see it in the written version of your thesis, but you don't need to say that the consonants are meaningless. It's just they can't be pronounced on their own. But
Yeah.
KTB probably means something to do with writing in Arabic, right? So it's not that they're meaningless, it's just that you can't say them until they have vowels put in. But
Okay, that's
it means
exactly the
writing,
idea
yeah.
I'm trying to transfer.
yeah.
And may I add one thing? Yeah, this notion of Moraic identity and root consonantal identity actually works even if you have a bilateral root or a tetraliteral root. So if you have a word with trilate, this is very, very rare in Arabic. So this one, it has like 4 root consonants, and it's exactly the same. So if you put it this way in the singular and the broken plural, it's gonna get you the same root consonants and Moraic identity as well. So for the singular, we have, for example, Sundu. We have here 1, 2, 3, 4 moras, but we have in the broken plural, Sanadi. We have an extra mora, light, heavy, but we have not. Take a look at the root consonantal identity, the same. in the same order. So it doesn't matter if you have 2 or 4 roots, which is less common in Arabic, it still works. The theory kills them. More questions?
I did notice something that maybe this is something that's happening in phonology now. So there's a kind of common thread with Yates' talk last time. So there was heavy use of templates, I think, in earlier frameworks, perhaps, rather than people, and they seem to be able to do things without them, which is kind of cool. So just move toward, let's kill all the templates, and be able to do it with things like correspondence and markedness. So that's not.
That's true.
In a sense, it's moving in the direction of what I've studied in the past, sort of a fringe outfit called whole word morphology, where this is really a prime example for whole word morphology, where you don't deal with morphemes basically. You just deal with the relationships among words, and so the meaning of the plural versus the singular is basically expressed as a specific kind of form-based relation, form and meaning relation between these two kinds of words. So this is a nice actually expression of that.
Right, that's what output correspondence is meant to do, right?
Precisely.
Compare outputs.
Correct.
I should let
Yeah, I have no comment.
That was my comment.
I was just gonna say, the one difference is that unlike word-based theory, you can't get this to work by saying, I'm gonna start with a singular and add something. Because that's not what happens,
You
right?
can't.
It has to be more
Yeah,
fine-grained
it's
than
more
that.
subtle than that.
Yeah.
But you're thinking word-based like Anderson style.
Yes,
That's not what I would go with.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, but anyways, it can't be like that, because
No,
you
no.
can tell like all the vowels change and,
No, that's ham-fisted.
right.
That's kind of started on the right track, but it didn't work. I think,
Well, I was thinking that's maybe a larger framework level thing to say. They remove this. This is part of
The move away
a
from
move
templates.
away from templates.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing.
Can I go back to another thing? So this seems like a very new and nice thing, if it's true. So you said it might be true. So I think you said that when you have a
Yep.
I may say this wrong, and maybe that's not what you said, but it looked like when you have a prefix and you can hear it, like ma, then the extra mora, if there is one, gets in the first syllable. And if you have a suffix, then the extra mora goes in the second syllable. And you call this something like adjacency, right? So the mora wants to show up.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, the mora wants to show up next to the prefix if there is one, and next to the suffix if there is one. And that gets you why sometimes it's heavy light and something. So what that would get you is,
Prefix adjacency.
right, yeah, cool. So what that would get you, yeah, and I'm just now reading what you have. What that gets you is, ma is gonna, when you have a prefix, you're gonna get heavy light for the stem.
Sure.
And when you have a suffix, you're gonna get light heavy, or you're gonna get the extra mora on the second. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, correct.
So that seems to be completely new. Right, I haven't seen that, and that's a very nice generalization, because it allows you to say something like, ma carries a mora,
Correct.
right? And then that mora, it's called a floating mora, right?
Mhm.
It can't dock on ma, weirdly, but it goes on the root, and it goes as close to ma as it can, right? That's exactly what you're saying there, right? And then n would also carry a mora, but it can't go on n, because
Because it's a suffix outside the stem.
right, so it goes on the stem, and then that would get what otherwise seems very arbitrary. Mod takes heavy light, and
Right.
suffix n takes light heavy. It's like, well, that's horribly arbitrary. So even if
Correct.
It's
even
not-
with other prefixes, like if it's not ma, even if you have a, I can give you an example now.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
attracts the
Yeah,
mora,
that's cool.
lengthen the vowel adjacent to a, which
Yeah.
both means a collective noun. So that's.
Yeah.
And by the way, in the less common broken plural, no affixes. I said lack affixes because you
Yeah,
don't
right.
have any vowel lengthening. If you take a look,
Oh, right.
it's not lengthened. That's already long in both
Right.
the singular and the broken plural. So.
And then if I could just add the one thing that I think you can simplify, it just gets rid of some stars and everything's a little easier. So you said that det mora, which says don't add any, is violated, but it's low ranked.
Uh-huh.
So we could do that. But actually, you don't need to, because you never violate det mora.
Yeah, you're never violating it.
Yeah, because it's an affix. The only mora that you ever have violating det mora is the one that's in there to mark the broken plural.
Mhm.
So if you look at your tableaus, you've got in the top left corner.
I got what you're trying to say.
Right.
It's like saying you
Yeah.
already have a mora here.
Yeah,
It says
exactly.
it's extra, so you don't need depth at all.
Right,
So just
and-
max.
And better, you can just say depth is ranked right up there with max,
Mhm.
and neither of them will ever be violated. So it actually makes a stronger claim, right?
So it's
The number of moras that you get, this is what you actually showed, the number of moras you get in the singular and the plural is identical. Of course, we have to say, but sometimes the plural, the only exponent of the plural is that there's a mora. You have to say that, but that's what that says on the left, and there's no reason you couldn't say that. But given that part, the constraint on the right is never violated.
Got you.
It's right up there with max.
Unless I didn't put it here.
Yeah,
This
you
one.
can put it right.
Yes.
Yeah, right, then it's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the solution, but, yeah, your real claim is, that's what it says right there, is that the mora is the exponent, it's what marks the plural.
Mhm. Exactly.
And that's, again, the McCarthy 2000 idea, that is sensible, right? So it's like, why do we get all this crazy shit with plurals? And the answer is, well, instead of adding a T or a prefix, you're adding a mora. And then that one gets put where the good Lord intended, depending on if it's a whatever. Or whatever.
Yeah, consonant gemination or vowel lengthening.
Yeah, or an extra
Gotcha.
Are we good, us important people?
More
important
comments,
people?
ideas, please.
Cool. Okay, anybody else?
I'm satisfied. I'm ready for dessert.
Okay, okay, so, anybody, Michael?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, okay, so, so I've got like just a couple of things leading to my bigger question. So, just to be sure I got this right. So, is it predictable whether you will add an extra mora or not? Because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, right? Is that just like, depends on the thing and we don't know?
I would say, that's a good question. I would say, if you, if we have just three shapes that takes equal moras. It's heavy, light, light, and light, 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 in my dialect. Everything else will lead you to have to add an extra mora, that's it. But the notion is, I don't add it selectively, it's already there in the broken plural, because there's some degree of arbitrariness in any language. It's a complex process, so you notice it after like pronouncing the broken plural that there's an extra mora already there, and it does a function. It does either vowel lengthening, geminating a consonant, or initiation of a new syllable. But how can you predict it? I would assume there is some degree of memorization here. You have like just three shapes. These, I put it here, bimoraic and trimoraic. I don't see anything else. And they tell you something because there is no vowel lengthening and no consonant gemination if you take a look at the words, and no initiation of a new syllable. So that's an indication of absence of an affixed mora.
Right. Okay, so then, okay, so if I know that one of these is of the type that gets an extra mora, then like we were talking about the adjacency thing, like is there complete predictability of where the mora manifests itself, or is that also somewhat has to be memorized?
No. For affixes, actually, you can predict where they are going, because if you have, just let me show it here, because I'm sorry, it doesn't say the extra mora. Yeah, if you have a prefix or a suffix attached to the broken plural stem, then you're going to assume that there is an extra mora. Any affixes added to the broken plural will tell you that there is an extra mora. There should be an extra mora. If there are no affixes, so that's one predictability. If you see a broken plural without any affix, you may predict that it's gonna be, but you have to be careful. It's not gonna need an extra mora, but you have to add other things. If you don't see any consonant gemination or lengthened vowel compared to the singular, like if you take a look up here, light, heavy, let me show you this one. If you take a look, at light, heavy, you will see that light, light. The vowels are really short, light, light, and this one is light. It's already short vowels. So once you see a lengthened vowel, light, heavy, there's gotta be something causing this lengthening, and it's the extra mora. So that's another indication you can predictable. If you see a lengthened vowel, there must be an extra mora. And of course, if you see this kind of gemination, once any doubling of a consonant tells you, hey, there is an extra mora. Because it doesn't happen if you have equal moras, that's an indication. But if you're asking, why do we get, like, for a word like this, to go in this direction before you see the broken plural. Like if I show you the word singular, qadim, you ask me, is it gonna take a consonant gemination? I cannot tell in advance. As an unnative speaker, there is some degree of memorization. You cannot tell in advance that it takes, for example, if you ask, why did you geminate here but you didn't geminate here? That's the arbitrariness of a language. Why did we add a new syllable? Why don't you just geminate as well here?
Because they are to an extent, I mean, there's a pattern to it, but they are to an extent irregular. So it's like, why isn't it brang? It's brought. Right.
Yeah.
It's irregular.
Yeah. Why is it fish, not fishes? I mean,
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that the thing they all have in common is the addition of an extra mora. It seems to be
95% of them.
No, right, sorry.
yeah.
I think the other thing to Michael's question is, so this is sort of a formal answer that isn't insightful, but it does fall out formally, right? So you have both prefixes and suffixes, and you know they can each carry a mora with them.
Sure.
Right? So imagine that over time, one of those prefixes died away, but it still had the mora. It would be a prefix mora.
Sure.
And one of the suffixes died away, but kept its suffix mora. Then it could be that what we have, historically at least, is the cases that unpredictably lengthen the first syllable, add a mora to the first syllable, used to have a prefix. And the ones that unpredictably now lengthen the second syllable used to have a suffix. So at least there's a prediction there about maybe the past that could be looked at historically. And then we'd have, it used to all be predictable, but now everything but the mora is gone in 85% of these words, or in many of these words, right? Everything but the mora is gone, and now you can't tell. But it may be that it used to be tellable. Could be sort of formally tellable if you said these are prefixes, there's a prefix mora and a suffix mora. Then you could predict it, but of course you'd have to know. It'd just be a purely formal prediction. It wouldn't really mean anything, but it might mean something historically.
And the weird thing, Chris, is that for other studies, I found this notion of affixed mora, but maybe in classical Arabic, modern standard Arabic, Muscat Arabic, they didn't talk or they didn't provide examples of Moraic identities, which is less common in my data. That's weird. To me, at least, is weird, because I'm sure their dialects contain some broken plurals which take Moraic identity, but maybe they didn't elicit enough data. I don't know. That's a point. Or maybe they want to follow the McCarthy and Prince idea of light, heavy template, either in the whole broken plural or in the first foot of a broken plural.
Well, that would be sad. Hopefully they just didn't work long enough, not that they just wanted to simply
But sometimes when you have a pre-existing idea that you think is correct, you build on it. You don't try to refute it.
Sure.
Okay.
Ultimately, what I wanted to ask is just because I was kind of adding up the things that have to be in the lexicon, right? So you need root consonants in the lexicon. You need to know the vowels for the broken plural because they just come up unpredictably. You need to know if it's the mora taking kind or not the mora taking kind.
Exactly.
And it seems like you may or may not need to know where you're going to put the mora if it is the mora taking kind. And so that what I'm ultimately wondering when I add all that up is, so what don't I have to have in my lexicon thanks to all this grammar stuff? Because I've got a lot of stuff in my lexicon apparently.
So
the hypothetical me who's an Arabic speaker.
I think what you've got is already enough to understand the broken plural. You have to have root consonants, and that's what it needs. You have to understand that the vowel qualities change, and you have to know that the vast majority of them takes an extra mora with three functions. It lengthens the vowel in the rightmost syllable, which is the natural position, or geminate a consonant, or initiate in your syllables. If you have affixes, the extra mora will follow the affix in its adjacent syllable to lengthen a vowel over there, and possibly that's it. That's it. Nothing else.
But yeah, right. This doesn't the whole
And I guess there are things
enterprise
you can't
since
do because of
for
this.
1600 years. There's things you can't do, but you
Which
can't
would
predict
fall out
exactly
from
what
this.
will happen.
Yeah.
that's,
At least you can say you
That's
cannot
sort-
do all these many things.
right. So it's restrictive and it doesn't allow you to do anything, but it's not predictive, and if I know the singular, I
Yeah.
can tell you the vowels
No.
and the thing,
No.
it doesn't work like that yet.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't for anybody else either, right? I mean,
You
that
have to
would be
native
great,
speaker, Yeah.
but no one's figured out how to do that.
The related question is, if I made a possible broken plural that is not the right one, as in like I added a more when I wasn't supposed to or something, so it should pass all the constraints that say that this is possible, it's just not the right one, then that falls out from the lexical stuff, I guess, because the grammar can't tell me you got the wrong one.
That's defensible versus defendable. It's, it
Oh,
becomes,
yeah.
it's like a
Right.
lexical blocking, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
it sounds okay, but that's not the right one.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
wrong one. Okay. Okay.
Because remember, all the constraints I talked about, you may get it right to the extent that you come to vowels. And then you will, I think, I predict you will stop making mistakes because they are unpredictable, even for a native speaker.
Yeah.
The constraints that I have presented only govern the moraid correspondence and the root consonantal identity. That's it, the optimal output. So we have nothing to do with vowels. That's why I did not change that. So if you assume that, if you change the u into a, asad, that's not a right broken plural.
Mhm.
Or isi, that's not a right broken plural. So what does that tell you? It helps you, the native speaker, to help you how to pronounce it. But why did it move? That's the crucial question. I even put it in the future research. Why does it change the a into u here and for other don't? I don't think they'll find like OT constraints in that possible sense. That tells you why this changes into this.
So that brings up the Brian question, right? So if we say that which you didn't say, but if one were to say that everything in the plural is made from the singular, then you'd have a horrible problem of like, yeah, all the vowels like changed. Whereas if we say that, which is obviously, in some sense, obviously true, that the root word is just the consonants, then it's true you have to add vowels, but we do not have to change the vowels that were there, because the idea is that the singular would have some vowels and the plural would have other vowels. But all the root words meaning write or read or whatever would have, write or book or whatever would have something to do with the consonants.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no
Consonants of
predicting
identity.
these things. But I think the problem in the history of the field, since O'Neill or whatever, the problem is that there's something obviously familiar about all the broken plurals. There's like a family resemblance, right?
Yeah.
And what is that? It's not the vowels. Oh, hell no. The consonants always change. The vowels seem random. But there's
The
this
consonants
deal
are
of-
identical, you mean?
yeah, the consonants are identical. The vowels seem random compared to the singular. But the root shapes don't seem random. And that's the trick. Like, what's the family resemblance? And that's what what the grammar is supposed to get. The family resemblance of all the irregular, there's many hundreds of them, but they don't. You can make a wrong one that just looks really wrong. Like,
Yeah.
that isn't a thing. But yeah, it's trying to pull out the.
Yeah, that's what's the basic idea of a root consonant. So all of them, not just the singular and the broken plural, even the verbs, even the adjectives, they are coming back or go back to the root, the first triliteral roots, or for most of them. So khadama, it gives you an adjective, an adverb, a verb, a noun, singular and plural. So it goes back to one ancestor. That's the point.
Recoverability. It's the only thing you have to hold on to.
I think even
Semantic
English works
root.
the same, right? So for the verb write,
Some
it gives you
extent.
writing,
There's
writer,
some crazy things.
whatever.
Right, and we have wrote.
Wrote and written.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
same
those
root
cases,
consonants
those
are
cases,
there.
that's true.
The wa, ra, ta, in Arabic sense.
Yeah, right. Now we have man and woman and women. It's just that it's not grammaticalized in English. In Arabic, it's
Or
It's a
shown
thing.
it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
or in English, it's pretty much on the edge of
Yeah,
things.
bring
It's
brain
like,
from,
yeah.
right?
But it's broken with go and went because went
Yeah,
is
right,
totally
that's really
clear.
broken.
Well, that's
that's the older
from a
forms of
lexical
verbs,
mixing.
right?
That's a historical accident.
I don't remember
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
it was.
There were two verbs, to wend and to go, and one
Whatever.
of them became the past tense of the other.
Sorry. What were the classes of verbs like ring, run? Right?
The strong
Yeah, the strong
Strong
verbs, the Germanic strong verbs. If someone could explain to me why they were strong, I would appreciate
They
that.
were mammoth.
Oh, I just thought one of them was strong. It was like strong. Strangstrung or something.
No.
So it got named for that.
No, I think
Yeah,
it's
that has to do with root out loud and
The-
Proto-European and stuff.
the
so.
early days of linguistics is tainted by this kind of poetical stance on stuff. Like if you look at the names for Chinese tones or something, you know, they're like flowery dancing tone or
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know, or Vietnamese tones have that stuff. What is that supposed to be terminology? You know.
You do that. Have you seen that with the vowels of Korean?